Mr. President.
The senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I understand we are not in a quorum call.
We are not.
Mr. President, with the change of our clocks in recent days, the sun seems to shine later in the day and days are getting longer, and we're even starting to feel signs of spring in the air here in Washington, D.C. But along with the longer days and the budding flowers, something else is rapidly approaching that Americans find far less palatable, and that, of course, is tax season. Americans have long had a distaste for taxes in this country, going back to the Boston Tea Party, a protest over seemingly minor taxes imposed by the British Empire that helped spark the American Revolution. And while we may not find ourselves clamoring for a revolution this April 15th, it remains nevertheless a hapless ritual of forking over a good percentage of our hard-earned wages to the federal government, something none of us looks forward to. But fortunately for the American people, the Senate Republicans have delivered a series of important victories through the working family tax cuts that will set them up for a far less painful tax season than they would have experienced if the Democrats had been in charge. In fact, our Democratic colleagues uniformly voted against any of these tax cuts. With the 2017 Trump tax cuts set to expire, Americans would have experienced the largest increase in history if it weren't for this new legislation. And again, our Democratic colleagues were okay with that. But we saved the average Texas family more than $3,000, and we prevented 62% of Americans from seeing a tax increase. Small business owners alone would have seen their federal tax rates increase by nearly 50%, and American households would have faced a more than $4 trillion tax hike. Democrats, as I said, were okay with that. By now, at least most of my colleagues have become familiar with some of these top-line numbers, but today I want to highlight a few provisions that have seen a little less daylight, even though they'll serve as a boon to working families all across our nation. As we all know, 56% of American voters have said that affordability is their top concern. I'm actually surprised it's that low, but 56 is no small number. Parents of small children in particular are feeling the affordability crunch even more than their childless peers as they try to stretch their paychecks to meet the increasing costs of housing, groceries, and childcare each month. And while there's no silver bullet that can magically make the cost of raising a family go away, Republicans have delivered provisions of the working family tax cuts that will attempt to lessen that burden. For example, back in 2017, Republicans doubled the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000. In 2025, that was scheduled to go back to $1,000, but Senate Republicans built on their prior success and permanently increased the child tax credit to $2,000 and $2,200 per child. And we ensured that this was not be a temporary provision, and we provided that it would not be eaten up by inflation by making sure that it was permanent and tying it to inflation so the child tax credit can keep pace with the increasing cost of raising a child over time. Parents who are married and filing jointly can earn up to $400,000 and still be able to claim this credit. In addition to expanding the child tax credit, Republicans took steps to alleviate what is perhaps one of the most commonly cited concerns that parents face, and that is the increasing cost of child care. Some families are spending as much as $15,000 or more per year for each child in full-time child care, higher than the average median cost of rent in the United States, and with even higher costs for the very young. This marks a more than 50% increase over the past decade, far outpacing inflation. These skyrocketing costs leave many families with two working parents in a very difficult dilemma. They can either eat this cost or choose to have one or the other parent to give up their income entirely in order to provide full-time child care. This choice can bring with it a great deal of mixed emotions, with trade-offs involved being much more complex than simply the dollars and cents on the other side of the ledger. And this isn't to mention the situation of single parents who often have even fewer options on the table. And once again, there's no single legislative fix to this dilemma, but Republicans have taken important steps toward addressing the struggles that working families face in the Working Family Tax Cuts Act by enhancing the paid family and medical leave credit and the employer-provided child care credit. The paid family and medical leave credit is a general business credit that's now offered to employers who provide paid family and medical leave to qualifying employees. So that makes it a lot easier for these businesses, often small businesses, to offer this child care support for their employees. Our 2025 legislation strengthened this credit, broadened the eligibility to make it more widely available, and made it permanent. This provision will reward businesses that offer these valuable benefits to their employees, allowing mothers to recover from childbirth and allowing both mothers and fathers the time they want to bond with their newborns in the first important months of their lives. We also built on these successes by bolstering the employer-provided child tax credit. This credit rewards businesses that provide child care to their employees, whether by constructing an on-site daycare center or by assisting employees with subsidies or other options that help them afford child care. By incentivizing on-site child care options, which can make the drop-offs and pickups less logistically challenging, and offsetting the high costs, this tax credit is another step toward a single, less stressful experience in parenting in America. And if there's anybody who needs a little less stress, it is parents. But this isn't the end of the pro-family provisions of the working family tax cuts. We also bolstered the adoption tax credit by making it partially refundable, up to $5,000, in order to support those who've decided to build their families through the heroic path of adoption. We increased the dependent care assistance exclusion up to $7,500 from $5,000. And we increased the child and dependent care tax credit, which will help millions of families offset the cost of child care by nearly $1,000 on average. No doubt that raising a family in today's world is a rewarding but challenging experience. But thanks to historic inflation that the Biden administration imposed on the American people, this already daunting journey became much harder. And while, again, we don't have a silver bullet or a magic wand that can make all these rising costs go away overnight, I hope that the pro-family reforms that we championed in the Working Family Tax Cuts Act can make this journey easier on the millions of parents around the country. So while none of us are looking forward to filing our income tax returns come April the 5th, I hope that working parents will see a little bit of well-deserved relief in their pocketbooks as a result of these provisions that Republicans provided in the working family tax cuts in which President Trump signed into law. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I'd note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call